Okay, I'm going to call this Committee of the Whole meeting to order. Our illustrious mayor is at another meeting today about housing, so he asked me to come in and fill in as the vice mayor, so that's where our mayor is today. And the meetings happen to be at the same time. So looks like everybody's in attendance except the mayor. You don't need to do a roll call, do you, Pam, as long as everybody's here? Okay. So the first item on the agenda is Matt Reed, SEH, review the updated downtown parking map. And I see on the desk we have some large maps there. If anybody after Matt gets done wants to come and take a look at them, you certainly can. Matt, go ahead.
Morning. I don't have any real updates. This is the map that I presented 2 weeks ago. Like Charlie said, I printed a big copy for everybody. I don't know if there was going to be some more discussion today or where this item was going to go, but I don't have anything more to add.
That's going to be up to the council members. I think, Councilor Johnson, we were going to go to another street and alley meeting, I believe, for this parking. Is that not correct? That's my understanding. We kind of split the last meeting up and to do this as a separate issue when we talked at our last street and alley meeting. Anybody have any objections? And everybody will be invited. It'll be a public meeting on this parking. We'll just get it scheduled here. We don't have it scheduled yet. I'll have to work with Matt, and Pam will work with everybody to set up a date for this. Anybody have any questions at this point? Maya?
So would the businesses from the main street would they be invited so they would have input on this?
It'll be a public meeting, so they can.
Anybody can come.
Anybody can come.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Councilor Paulson?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. So is there, Matt, is there a copy for each one of us there? Or is it just one big copy?
I can make more copies if you
No,
like some. There's just the
not
one
necessary.
copy.
I
Yep.
just
Yeah, if
want to
anybody
take it.
right now, if anybody wants to go up before we go to the next.
And then the next question I had, so is there any updates in this compared to the one that was in the packet last time? So this is just a blown up version of it. Okay, and then part of the discussion that your street and alley committee will be having then is basically what to do with that, if we're gonna continue 2 hour, if it's gonna be free.
What we're going to do, we'll be looking at each different scenario that we currently have in our parking, between parking lots, between the main street, between side streets, et cetera, whether we're going to continue some of the 2 hour, whether we're going to go to the parking lots as free lots, no more permit parking. Those are the things we'll be discussing just as a beginning. But we'll have a full discussion of all the parking.
Perfect.
That includes the whole city.
Okay.
Part of it we can't change because of winter, the every other side of the street during winter
Will you be
months.
breaking it down versus like the commercial section, Chestnut section versus residential meetings, or will you have it all combined?
It's going to be combined.
Okay,
I don't believe we're going to break it down, correct, Steve? We're going to do the whole works at once because the residential, there isn't a lot we can do for changing that residential to
right.
the 2 weeks in the summer, every other, and then you have every
I was
other.
just maybe tacking on to Counselor Beyondich. I don't know if it would be feasible to just send a letter to business owners, but I don't want to negate any residential either, but I don't know what would be I just want to let people know. I know you we put the public notices out, but just some of the people by it would be the 200 block by Sugar Shack and where that lot is. Just there was a lot of interest in that, and I just maybe
That'll
want to
be
make
part-
sure
that'll
those
be part of the discussion.
people could be engaged. Okay,
That'll be part
thank
of the
you.
discussion. I don't know, Britt, it's pretty hard to notify everybody.
Do our best we can. I do have a very robust email list for the Revive Virginia group, which includes a lot of the
Well, maybe
downtown
we
business
can-
owners. I'll make sure to invite them.
Okay, that works. So that's a lot of the business owners that'll be
It's a
affected by this.
majority of the people that have an interest in downtown are on that list.
So we'll get a meeting set up here with Matt's schedule, my schedule, Steve's, and Counselor Barnzelli's schedule, and then we'll have to work around that. Probably going to be a few weeks down the road because I'm going to be gone for part of this. Medical stuff at Mayo Clinic that I have to be at for the middle of one of the weeks coming up here. So we'll figure it out, though. All right. Anybody else have anything? Steve, anything more?
No, I just think that utilizing her email and word of mouth too, once we have it, we can definitely make sure we canvass downtown and make sure that I also want to be cognizant that the small business owners are not going to be able to come to us during their work days. So I want to make sure that they have the opportunity to send an email back or talk to one of us in person. So thank you.
We can make that an evening meeting too, after business hours or over in most of things. I don't have an issue with that. Does anybody else here have an issue? We can do it like, 5:30 or something, like we normally do. So Matt, you have an issue with that at all? Okay. All right. With that, we'll get it scheduled. We'll get notice out to you folks. Thank you. Move on to item number 2. We have another individual in the audience, Jan Peplinjack at 909 10th Street South, to discuss a water shutoff issue. She and I had a nice, good conversation yesterday. Jan, if that green light is not on, push the button on the thing so it comes on. There you go. And you can pull that mic down a little bit so we can hear you.
I talk pretty loud, so
Okay, that's
hopefully you hear
fine.
me.
That's fine.
So, and I only need a few minutes. I did contract with a company to level a garage, and during the course of the leveling, when they were almost complete, they hit the water line. The water line hadn't been marked on the property, first of all, and secondly, I think a little bit of the sewage line was nicked as well. The problem ensued when we called Public Works to turn off the water, and none of the water could be turned off. On my property, allegedly, I'm not quite sure exactly how close to the alley the water shut off needs to be either city or mine, and that's immaterial, but that didn't work. The key that the city came, or the Public Works came and tried to shut it off. But they also wouldn't be able to shut it off at the end of the alley where the other main was. During this time, I've got pumping water. They're pumping water into the alley, and we have no water. We had no water for 30 hours while they tried to figure out how to shut off the main, is what I was understanding. And over those 30 hours, between the contractor, the plumber that finally agreed to step into several feet of water to try and fix the plumbing, and the Public Works people, a lot of frustration and finger pointing kept going. Ultimately, it was resolved. A plumber, that they finally agreed to step into the water while they were pumping water out, and took them all of half an hour once he got in there, but it took forever because we were trying to shut off the water. I let it go because there was no cost to me, dollar cost to me, and I thought it was handled appropriately, except for a little finger pointing going back and forth. And of course, men get together. Unfortunately, you guys kind of get hairy. And so when I step in and ask, well, what does it mean when you tell them to just flip a coin and decide what to do? They weren't real happy with me. But what I was most concerned about is, in the area where I live, you're going to be doing a lot of work. The city's going to be doing a lot of work, repairing the streets, repairing the curb, and other kinds of things, and the fact that you couldn't shut off the water put a little panic in me. And so Charlie did check, and I really appreciated the conversation yesterday because it was the conversation that I would have liked to have had, with anyone else about who knew what was going on. So he explained what the problem was. Gopher One evidently made an error in not marking the water, but I'm also on a list to have the properties around me to have the water main worked on so that they can shut off the water. That scares me because I didn't want that to happen, but I did get that from Charlie, and so I want to thank you guys for coming out and giving me an opportunity to talk about it. But I do think I was going to be asking about a maintenance plan for not only the WSO on my property, but the WSOs that are at the junctures all over the place. At one point, one of the Public Works gentlemen said, well, we can't shut off the water all over the city just because you have this problem. And I understand that, so then I wanted to make sure that I was on some list somewhere to get that particular problem fixed. And took care of that for me and assured me that I was on a list. Probably won't be for a while, but I get that. I appreciate the time, though.
Okay, you're certainly welcome. The little bit of the background when we went and checked, the Gopher One marked the wrong thing to start with. They marked her house, and the work was to be done on her garage, and that did not get marked. So the contractor inadvertently didn't have markings out there, and they punched it with the rod that they put down. They punched her lines. But I've since talked to the public utilities, and she is going to be on a list. It will not be this fall. Possibly next summer or somewhere later in the summer, they will be fixing her shut-off on her alley so it works. But it's just going to be a matter of some time based on the work schedule that Public Works has. But she is on a list now.
Public Utilities. Public Utilities does all water main repairs and shut-offs and
Yeah.
not Public Works.
I'm
Two different
sorry,
departments,
I'm
but
sorry,
yeah.
I misspoke, public.
I kept saying the city, and they kept saying, we're not the city.
Yeah.
So I don't know
They're
who
very
it is.
proud to be public
Right,
utilities.
yes, public
And we did
utilities.
find out,
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
and we did find out in the future that if something like this happens again, they can shut off a whole block. Those are available, but they didn't want to do that at this point. But if something in an emergency happens, they can shut off a whole section. And they will do that if they have to in the future, so they can get these things fixed a little bit quicker. But there's shut-offs all over town that need repair. And with the work we're going to be doing in the future on alleys that we just approved, most of those shut-offs and stuff are in the alleys, they're not on the front streets. So those things will get fixed as we do alleys, 'cause we're going to do total reconstruction on these alleys in the future that we've scheduled for end of 24, 25, 26. We'll have selected alleys, but yours will get fixed. They promised me that. Okay, but we had a nice conversation yesterday. Okay, any more questions? Counselor Johnson?
Thank you. Do we have an estimation of how many of the older parts of town are one shut off for 4 or 5 houses? Does the utilities have any idea?
Yeah, everybody is like that. There's usually a main shut-off. Every house has a shut-off, but then there's usually a planned location where the entire block or subsection or whatever is on a main. And then there's another one beyond that, kind of like transformers, the same kind of thing with water.
And then my other question is if Gopher One didn't mark the proper spot, then that would mean that the company was digging in an unmarked spot. I know at my house, when I've had come, they write okay or nothing. There's some indication that there is nothing there. So I would hope that the utilities has a discussion with that contractor that if it's not marked, you better call somebody again and make sure, because usually, if I remember right, it's a white, literally says white in okay, that you can dig there. So if there were no markings there, I would think that was a contractor issue. So I would hope the utilities would follow up and maybe provide some education to our contractors in town. Thank you.
And the contractors, for information, did pay for all the work, so Jan did not have to pay for any of this because they messed up. That's what happened. And it was all paid for. She did not pay anything out of pocket for this fix. So anyway, I believe we've come to a resolution, correct, Jan? Okay. So with that, any other questions anybody has? If not, let's move on to item number 3. Approve the resolution to apply for and accept funds for the Brownfield Assessment Grant. Britt, do you want to give us a little background on that?
Yeah, for numerous years, we've had a Brownsfield Coalition, an Iron Range Brownsfield Coalition that has applied for a federal EPA grant for cleanup and contamination. The last one we got, Charlie, if you help me remember, was in 2016, I believe.
2016, it was $696,000, if I remember
And
right.
so what happens is, a group of cities come together to make this coalition. We all put in a joint application to the EPA, and when we were successful in 2016, one city was the fiscal agent, one was the applicant. Every city submitted their invoices to the fiscal agent, and then the money got spread out to everybody. We want to do that again. We have a very interested group of cities, like, off the top of my head, I know it's Nashwauk, Aurora, White Lakes, Ely, Hibbing.
Originally, when we first started, there were 13 cities, but I believe it's like a little less than,
I think we're down to 10 now.
yeah,
Yep.
it's like 10 now.
Yep.
And that was a successful grant. In fact, they complimented us on our application because
did.
we had one of the best applications from this group. And they hadn't seen that many cities come together for an application, so we're going to try this again.
We're going to try again. So we would be the applicant, the city of Virginia would be the applicant, and then Ely has agreed to be a fiscal agent.
Okay, so we need to pass this resolution to go for this again. So I'm looking for a motion to do this.
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Johnson, is there support? Support by Counselor Barnzelli. Any further discussion on this? This is a good thing because that brownfield stuff is very expensive to clean up issues. Counselor Paulson.
Thank you. I just noticed that we just have to notify them by email today, or by today's, or actually it was by yesterday, the October 31st, so are we okay? We're okay. Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. With that, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. Okay, let's move on to item number 4. Review and approve the People Service Incorporated contract. I'm going to turn to you again, Brett, because you worked on this contract.
Actually, I think Pam probably has more of that
Oh,
information
you
than I
have
do.
one?
Pam
Okay,
does.
Pam. Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay, thank you. Yeah, so every year we actually get a letter from People Service regarding their CPI increase. This year was 8.3%, positive 8.3, making the total adjustment 9.3, effective January 1st, 2023. And the increase was about over $2,000 a month. And it is part of their contract.
And it seems like a large increase. Good morning. But what's happening with all the increases we've had that have been mandated from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency of things that they have to do, there's a lot more things that People Services has to do for the city now to keep up to date with all the mandated things that are coming from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency without any cost reimbursement. So we're going to be the ones that are going to get hung out to dry like every other city. Something needs to be done. Personally, I believe at the legislative session to stop this unfunded mandates. So put this out for discussion. Anybody have some discussion? I don't think we have a choice. We're just going to have to eat it. So it's going to cost us about $24,000 a year more. Sherry, do we have that in the budget at all?
I would have to, it's being we just got this, I mean, we'll have to make it in the budget. It'll be under the wastewater
Okay.
enterprise fund. But, yeah, going forward, I think we probably should be watching this contract because they also base it on increases on what we settle with the unions. So can't have both pieces of pie.
No, that's right. Do we want to have further discussion, Britt, with him, or Pam, or is this, we've had enough already?
It is just this annual increase. I think we moved that, the contract part out of there.
Okay, so it's just the annual increase then, okay. Any further discussion, anybody? Maya?
So would this be something, Sherry, that needs to be looked at? What time of year to get it in the budget if there's an increase?
I would say, yeah, early July would be nice before we set the preliminary levy. But realize this is an enterprise fund, so it's doing okay so far, but yeah.
What we may be looking at, Counselor Beyondich, is the fact that we may have to look at a small increase again in the enterprise fund like we did with sewer, and put some steps in there to increase the sewer rates and the garbage rates like we've done. This one we have not done that with. So we may be down the road, starting in '23, have to look at this a little bit harder if the fund starts to deteriorate too fast and we start getting to a zero balance in it. We got money in there now, so we're okay.
So is this something we could put on the calendar for July to be looking at?
And we should
Be part
notify,
of the budget process.
yeah, we should notify people services we need to have this earlier. We've done it with the county on the garbage fees, so we get this increases in their tipping fees earlier now than waiting until after the first of the year, or after we got our budget done. So that's working out better, is it not, Britt? Okay.
So
This is,
ask that it be put on a calendar or on an
you
agenda
can,
for
you
us to
can,
look at?
you can do a motion if you want to have this, let's get, let's, okay the contract first, and then you can go to a motion. Looking for a motion on this increase.
I'll move for a discussion.
I'm sorry, Steve, I didn't catch all of it.
Move for a discussion.
Support, okay, it's moved and supported for discussion on this, not approval yet at this point, just discussion, more discussion. You can have that anytime. Okay. All those in favor?
I have discussion, Charlie. I want to say something.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
So I just want to remind the council that public, or the people service does everything down there. And when there is a major catastrophe, they handle that. Like, they have the resources across 4 or 5 states that they can pull in. And this is an increase that comes directly from them. It is not something that we're doing internally. So it is a high increase, but that's, as Councilor Baraboo said, everything is increasing this year. And I would think that just letting them know that if they have an idea in July, that would be best time, or maybe we need to, like Councilor Beyondich said, send out an email in July asking for their anticipated increases for us. So I don't think there's any way around it, but I do think that we are definitely still getting our bang for our buck from these folks and what they can provide should there be a major emergency down there. Thank you.
Okay, we don't actually have a motion to pay this, do we? Did you? Okay, and the support was Councilor Barnzelli? Okay. Any further discussion? I can't quite see all, okay. Hearing none, all those in favor of the increase to people services signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thank you. Move on to item number 5. Review City Code, Section 10.37E, entitled Public Nuisances, Noise, and Request for Signage. Okay, let's see. Get to mine here. Okay, there it is. Okay, are we looking to upgrade this? Councilor Beyondich, I know you brought this up.
Actually, I'm going back to the previous, I would like to make a motion that this be put on
Oh,
for
okay.
June? Did you say June or July of next, June? And not saying that they're not doing a good job, but I think it's something we need to work into the budget if there are increases, so it's not something at the end of the year that we're going back to look at. So it's just to open up the conversation and get the numbers for the next year budget.
Prior to our,
Support.
okay, it's been moved and supported to notify people's services that we want them to present their potential increases in contract either in, well, let's just say July, is that okay? Because that's early enough, of 2023, so we can put it into our budget process. Okay, any further discussion on that? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thank you very much, Counselor Beyondich. Now, the next item was the noise violations, and I believe you brought it up last time, did you not? Or who brought that up? Did you? Okay. You want to expound on that, Counselor
Sure,
Paulson?
thank you. So it was mainly in the section G, item 1, 2, actually 1 and 2. Just maybe tightening up, and I think maybe we need to work on this a little bit, maybe with attorney and maybe someone from the PD or Blight office. But after hearing some of the constituents coming up and discussing some of the issues with things that are left on people's property, whether they're actual motor vehicles or camper tops or couches or what have you, it's section, or yeah, I guess it's section G, it's stated inoperable motor vehicles. Then item 1 is declaration of nuisance, and it talks about motor vehicles. Then it's number 2 talks about inoperable motor vehicles. And I'm just wondering if we can tighten up or add some additional definitions in there. If it is a camper top, if it's a whatever, I don't know, just so that our enforcement part of it, our blight portion or any of our officers, if there is a complaint, that we have definitions in place that then can enact a procedure and go through the proper procedural channels that we would normally take with other items that are listed in terms of, that we have motor vehicle listed, we've got, so it's not necessarily about noise, Vice Mayor. It's mainly about that section after we've had constituents coming up and discussing about items on people's properties. And maybe just have that language looked at a little bit further. I know this was just coming forward for discussion, but I think we need to have our city staff maybe weigh in and give us some direction on this. Thank you.
Okay, so that is, are you going to make a motion to have staff look at this and bring it back to us?
I would be happy to make that motion.
I think that's the appropriate place along with the city
Okay,
attorney.
you got it.
Is there support for that?
Support for discussion?
Okay, Counselor Johnson.
Do we know when the last time the nuisance ordinance was reviewed as a whole, other than when we changed all the hims and hers and things?
I don't remember at all. Long time ago, I think.
Yeah, I know the very large city code change was in '88,
So
but I
maybe,
don't know if there was anything that's added since then, or, yeah.
maybe if, since this is the one with the noise and everything coming up, maybe this would be the time to look at the entire nuisance ordinance, because I'm guessing there's some new nuisances from '88 that aren't probably in here. And maybe, like with a lot of our ordinances, they're very generic and there's no ramifications because that's the way they were designed. So I would be willing to change my support, Counselor, if you change your motion to include just the ordinance as a whole, and then maybe.
I would absolutely do that.
Then maybe we, in the next month or two, we can make it more, because, and then as other ordinance changes come up, they're going to start cross-referencing each other as well. So thank you.
Okay, with that, Pam, did you get that change? Okay. Any further discussion on this? We have a motion and a support on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Yeah, go ahead, Chief. We'll include your department in this stuff, too.
Oh, thank you. We greatly appreciate it. Vice Mayor, Council, how are we all doing? So just a reminder, though, that, and by all means, there's some big changes, and there's some changes we'd like to see that we'll be coming forward to with kind of some of the homeless issues we're having in the camping outdoors. And I know Brian has a ton of changes, a lot of them which would fall under the parks and rec side of things under public nuisance and whatnot. And I'll remind you, though, any changes to these takes staff and bodies to enforce. Trish rolling around in a truck doesn't put a big dent in the issues we have going on around town. Bill Cole's not here to speak for what goes on with that, but I'm telling you, it's not doing much. So we need bodies, you know, and I've got 2 officers on patrol today. They can't roll around keeping track of what vehicles aren't registered, and it's just impossible. So it takes staff, really, at the end of the day. So again, any changes are very welcomed, by all means, needed, but we need staff to do it. So just my thoughts on it right off the bat, so, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Assistant Chief, we appreciate it very much. Counselor Paulson.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to kind of add, and you don't have to come back up. I just wanted to kind of add that the part of the reason that I wanted to bring this up is mainly because we've had people coming here, you know, we've kind of discussed about how to file the blight complaint and then what processes we're going through and how long it takes. So I think just by tightening this up a little bit, not saying that someone needs, I don't mean it in any way disrespectfully to the department or blight or anything. You know, I totally get it's a staff issue. But for me, bringing it up was more so that if the public goes to do the reporting, we have it on the books, what the definitions are, and then what type of things can be served and how that, I guess, I wouldn't say how it ties into our process. So going forward. So I hope I didn't offend your department because I certainly know where you guys are at
Well, and
staffing wise.
And honestly, in the blight issues, normally, we don't even deal with them a whole lot at the PD until it's literally time to issue a citation. You know, then we get the reports that have come in already.
Right.
But like Brian will tell you, ordinances are tough, laws are tough, because if you make them vague, that can leave problems. If you make them very specific, that leaves problems. So it is that fine line that you walk when you're trying to discern what exactly, and you know, like even if we talk about the noise complaint, a good example that recently came up at the PD, okay, yes, you know, everybody gets so sick of these vehicles that are very loud ripping through town, and it's annoying, especially if you live at a four-way stop. Well, now we have Tesla vehicles that are gonna be coming out with speakers that pump out the noise because otherwise they're completely almost silent cars. So the statutes don't necessarily address the fact that now it's a speaker pumping out vehicle noise. I mean, it's just crazy things like that. So we have to adjust on the fly, absolutely. And that's where putting a little flexibility within those ordinances is good. But by all means, no, we understand, we do. And trust me, you roll around this town and there is a lot of blight issues. We all know that on many different levels, whether it's vehicles, whether it's houses, whether you name it. So, and by all means, we all want to do our part to make it better. But it does take staff at the end of the day. So, thank you.
Okay, we haven't voted yet, have we? Okay. Any further discussion, Counselor Beyondich?
And also looking through this, I'm seeing some crossovers between blight and this ordinance, such as all snow and ice that is not removed from public sidewalks within 24 hours after the snow or other precipitation causing the condition, and the trees and the hedges and the billboards and such. And what I've run across is there are a lot of elderly that can no longer take care of their properties. And it used to be our neighbors helped each other. I mean, our neighbor was going through cancer. We were taking over the shoveling and the grass cutting, but we don't have that. But some of this, I agree, it's kind of crossing over into the blight.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, Counselor Beyondich. And if you get a private service in to help an elderly person, I've had fortune to, with a couple neighbors that have had private services come and do the shoveling. It's anywhere from $75 to $125 a time. So you imagine you get 3 snowfalls in a week. These people cannot afford those things, and the neighbors do not do like they used to do. You know, I know before one of my neighbors hired a service, I used to go over and help them shovel and take care of it for them, but I don't do that now because they have a service, so, but it is expensive. So any other further discussion on this? Counselor Johnson?
I'd agree with you, Counselor Beyondich. I'd say as a single parent, with 24 hours isn't realistic for me. You know, it snows overnight, we go to school, I go to work, I have a city council meeting, it's bedtime, next morning, we do it all over again. So I think, you know, I appreciate it and I do the best we can, but you know, like you said, we have to be careful what we wish for, because otherwise we're going to be, the day after a snowstorm, someone's going to be writing tickets to everybody because they haven't had time to do it. So, but I think just taking a general overview and looking at it is the right option at this time.
I think our department is pretty lenient on those snowstorms we've had, especially the big ones, because it takes more than a day to get some of this stuff done. I know from a personal experience that I can't sometimes get it all done on the same day. So I appreciate what they do, because they kind of just warn the people when they see them and to please get it done. So anyway, we need to have a vote on this. We have not yet. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Move on to item number 6, discuss requests for city to purchase various parcels in Virginia. This portion may be closed as per Minnesota.
We had to modify the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Mayor.
I'm sorry.
And Vice Mayor, these next two, items 6 and 7, which are ordinance changes regarding camping on public property and regulation as to parklands, come from the Park and Recreation Commission.
Brian, you want to explain what you're doing here?
Good morning, Council. Over the past several months, the Park and Recreation Commission has taken on a very fun and lengthy exercise of reviewing all rules, regulations, and ordinances in the city of Virginia that pertain to parks. I dare say a couple of our Park and Rec commissioners are regretting their decision to volunteer to be on this commission after that exercise, but they did a tremendous job of reviewing everything. We've actually compiled for our use all these documents into one file so that staff has an easier time referring to things. But in doing so, Park and Recreation Commission is making several recommendations that City Council consider making some changes to some of the ordinances. Which one would you like me to start with?
10.18, camping on
10.18, which is the camping. Currently, we have nothing on the books as it regards to camping within our parks. So the Park and Recreation Commission would like to see an ordinance adopted that we can add into our policies and procedures banning camping within our parks. Now, we don't have just Olcott Park. We also have our trail systems. We have pocket parks. We have many different parks throughout the entire city. So this ordinance would apply to all parks and park property.
Okay, any questions to start with? Councilor Johnson?
On D, camping on near railroad tracks, what is that relevant to?
There's a section just on the south end
Okay.
where it does split through the Virginia. Campers down there.
Okay. And then my other question on E, and this, I may be thinking differently, but does this mean my kids can't camp in my backyard?
That's private property.
So that's okay.
this complete ordinance only pertains to public property.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, I appreciate that clarification, because I know I'm going to get that question too. Those were my only two questions in this one. Thank you.
Brian, I appreciate the work that your commission has done on this. Councilor Paulson, you have a question?
Thank you. I guess I just was making sure it's not, this isn't actually specific to parks, because it says public property is defined, or is that specific to parks?
No, the Park and Recreation Commission focused on not camping in parks, and then when it came to ordinance, we focused on no public property. So
Okay,
that
so that,
not the loophole that, well, I'm on a sidewalk, or I'm on the street,
Okay.
or I'm in the alley, or,
so it says City Code Chapter 1, Section 1.02.
Yep.
That describes all public
all
property
public
within
properties,
the
all
city of
property owned by
Virginia.
the city of Virginia.
And then, again, going to item E, camping within 100 feet of a privately owned parcel zoned for residential uses or within 100 feet of a residential structure regardless of zoning is prohibited. Okay, so that would be within 100 feet of somebody's private property?
Yes, and it should say camping on public property within 100 feet is
That's-
prohibited.
that's
And
for
we should probably
clarification I
add
was
that little.
looking at.
Yeah.
Okay, so if it's camping on 100 feet of, within 100 feet of public,
Camping on public property with 100 feet of a privately owned parcel zoned for residential use or within 100 feet of a residential structure would be prohibited.
okay. And where I'm going with this, that the zoning that you're describing is residential zoning.
Correct.
How about if we have in our city, commercial zoning or areas that are like owned by somebody like an RGGS situation? Is there anything addressing that portion? Even though that it is public property, is it a private property? Is there anything that addresses that portion of it at all?
There isn't. By all means, it's easily added. I guess more our concerns is because we've been getting a lot of the complaints of individuals that are camping right off the bike trail, not too far from individual residences. That's more of that, oh my goodness, somebody is literally camping in my tree line issue that we're coming up with. By all means, if we wanted to add more of the commercial properties as well, if I owned a business and all of a sudden somebody's camping right outside, I'd probably have an issue with that, obviously.
Would trespass laws not apply?
If they're on public, if it's public land adjacent to that private commercial lot, then they technically can.
And I think where I'm getting, I'm just in reading this kind of for the first time now, just some questions regarding public safety are coming into my mind, and it's not necessarily downtown, but what I'm focused on is if we have people that are utilizing the trail system and there are people camping right off of that trail system, we have an easement through that trail system on that property. So would it be helpful for public safety for those using the trail system to enact something beyond, I guess you said, yes, you can, but I'm really.
The balancing act
I
here that we're
agree.
doing.
I agree.
Because the problem is, basically at that point, we would be essentially saying no camping on any Virginia public lands. Is that realistic? Is that easily enforced? I think we all agree that, okay, it might be good on paper, but we're still going to have the issues that we're having. We're just trying to kind of remedy where that issue is taking place at this point.
Sure. And-
You know, it's tough.
And I'd hate to craft an ordinance based upon something that's happening in the current situation, and I think I'm trying to not do that. But my concern is still the general public who are utilizing our trail systems, whether it be biking, walking, moms with strollers, and the actual public safety while utilizing our trail system. So I don't know if we could get an opinion on that, or I don't want to make your job harder, but I just am concerned that we want to make sure that people feel safe using the parks that we have currently or any of our trail systems that are currently there. And, we've spent a lot of money on those trail systems, so I think it's only right to have some public safety concerns over those areas, especially when activity can happen and it's not necessarily very visible, but just to maintain public safety. So I don't know if that can be addressed.
I'm not suggesting we do it, but this is exactly why a lot of big cities and towns like ours decide to make a designated area. And then that's when that becomes that homeless encampment that's set up by the city. And that's actually what the county suggestion to us was, why don't you guys clear out part of the tree line down off of the bike trails and make that designated camping area and set up biffies? And I'm like, no, that's not what we're looking to do. So again, that's why a lot of places do go in that direction, though, to move it away from bike trails and other things that people are using for those reasons and public safety. And at least we know then where folks are at. And I don't know if that's solving anything, though, really.
Can I follow up on that, if you don't mind?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, and I don't want to open up a can of worms. I'm trying to think of this proactively because I've talked to lots of social workers about a lot of the issues that we're seeing in a lot of our parks are areas that are, have a lot of trees or privacy areas in our community. And I think even I've maybe had a conversation with you a while back when you guys went, I think you took a summertime tour down there. And my concern then, how can I say this? If people don't want help, you can't do anything to help them. But if there is an ordinance on the books that states you cannot be here, will that help? Will that actually help if they are? I wouldn't say given a citation, but it would be that there would be a law enforcement action that would then bring them. This is my theoretical thought process, but I'm not sure how the actual system works. But then would there be because we're writing an ordinance, we're drafting an ordinance to give law enforcement a tool in order to help those folks, whether they know they want or need help or not, that it would bring them then into a system that could then help them get either A, mental health services, or B, shelter services. Am I thinking correctly on that?
Absolutely.
And,
Absolutely.
and that would be my heart in crafting any such ordinance, not to make an encampment, but I've had a lot of constituents approach me recently, and they are very concerned now that the one near Holiday gas station, I think, is not there any longer, or it's changed in its form.
Morphed
It's morphed.
with the seasons.
And I'm trying to be respectful
I know.
of all people here, but I am hearing from a lot of constituents here in Virginia, a lot of residents in Virginia. This is a big concern that they have. And in crafting an ordinance such as this, I would hope that we would have not only the best interest of, all residents, but also the homeless population that is happening here. And that, we've talked about this before, we're coming up to winter. It happens every year. The foyer was created. It's a limited number of housing spots. But if we create an ordinance that gives law enforcement tools, then you could safely get those individuals into situations where they're going to become part of a system that has the net in order to service their needs. Would that be a fair statement, Chad?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It can't hurt. The bottom line is it can't hurt. At the end of the day, they're still going to make their own decisions. And believe it or not, the individuals that we keep speaking kind of around about, I've gone down with this and had the conversations with them. They understand that this is coming. They know that this is where we're at, and they get it. They really do,
So based on kind of that feedback and things that I've talked to people that I've talked to in our community based on what they've told me, could we add some language in there regarding that? So on the trail system, I don't know how many feet you want to give that or what the recommendation would be, but that might enhance the tools in your toolbox in order to assist the current homeless population that we have, as well as address public safety concerns from current Virginia residents. And I don't know if that makes sense, but
It does, Counselor Paulson, it does make sense. You're okay now? Okay. Counselor Johnson, you had your light on, so
On C, on that first page, that, I want to make sure that allows us as a council to grant a permit for somebody who's, maybe there's a bike tour that wants to sleep in Olcott Park overnight, or Land of the Lou and those kinds of things, correct? Okay. The other question I have is, as Councilor Pouncer was talking, is we have some folks that have been occupying public space for quite a while. Do they have any protections moving forward as squatters in an abandoned building or something like that we need to be aware of? And I guess that question would be for our city attorney.
go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, and I think, not to oversimplify it, but I think the answer to that question is no. There's a couple of statutes, there's some rules out there that protect cities. Obviously, we don't have to worry about adverse possession type interests because those interests can't accrue against the city. As far as squatters, if you've got a trespasser, you can't claim that a trespasser in a building has established a residence. So I think we're protected on that front.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that question got out. And then my other question is the current encampment, is that on public land or private land?
That's all part of, down by the lake, that's all the public land area.
The larger one to the east of town?
That one's technically county land, to be honest.
Well, I just want to clarify, because I want.
All the sheriff's departments are probably, no, just kidding.
Because, I really truly appreciate the designated space. And if the county is telling us that's something we should look at, well, let's look at it on their land. So that might be a discussion to have as we move forward.
Even part of that bleeds over into technically what is state land, just a sliver down there. Yeah, it's kind of odd area, but.
And I just wanted clarification for that, because quite honestly, if it was a company's land, they could issue the no trespass, and that would just.
And we deal with that with the mine
Right.
quite often, and we'll get the calls, and we're still the ones that go down there and wind up informing the individuals they are trespassing. Those ones are easy. And bottom line is, it's private property, you need to leave, that's that. The public one is the one we're definitely really having issues with right now.
And I just want to thank you and Parks Commission and Brian and the staff for being sensitive to that. This is not a black and white issue, that this isn't the city trying to get people out because we don't want them here. It's about public safety and keeping other folks safe, and really moving forward towards being respectful of people's choices if they are making those choices. So thank you all very much for that.
You'll notice, I think it's one of the last sections here, section G. It talks about even though it is public land, and maybe even the wording should be changing here a little bit, unless there's an immediate threat of danger or anything like that being posed by individuals. Like we have this encampment, to me, giving them at least a notice that they need to move is kind of important just for that reason, Counselor. And again, I listed in there, I thought it was important to let them know what resources are out there at that time, bringing the folks with us from social services or our CCRT folks from out at the mall to come down there and again, remind them that we have things available. It is time to move off wherever you're at now. But again, keeping that in mind that this is a sensitive area, it really is. These folks do need help. Like you pointed out, they don't always want the help. But again, at least letting them know it is still available.
Okay, I have a comment, if I may here. That encampment under that protective shelter by the Holiday gas station on 6th Avenue, we as a city council gave permission to the special schools to be able to put clothing and stuff there for the cold months and other clothing for people that need clothing. Now, they're going to be coming to this council. They're afraid to go there with their students now because of what the encampments are. So they're going to be coming to this council to ask us to find another spot where they can safely put these items that can be used. They've got tons of clothing, tons of other stuff that have been donated to this special school up on the north side in the old Plaza Hardware building. My daughter happens to be one of the ones in charge up there, and she's going to be coming with, they're afraid to bring these special needs kids down there to put this stuff out. So I don't know what we're going to do with that, because we did give them actual permission by a motion by the city council to use that, and they're afraid to use it now. So
We passed this, self-solving problem, right?
Solves the problem,
Yep,
yeah.
absolutely. Should take care of that issue and, it'll no longer be an issue, hopefully.
Because they want to help the people that need help with clothing and stuff, so that's part of their goal as a school. To bring that to your attention. Any other discussion? Councilor Paulson, you have one more?
Yes, so then I understand we want to get this passed, but are we going to have then further addition, if possible, that would make me feel better? And I don't know what the recommendation of,
I was going to
Distance.
recommend that we move this, yet we're not going to get some more language in there before we actually move it to put it to a council meeting for final
Okay.
approval.
and then so how, what distance would it be off of the trail system? I guess we would need to look at a distance, I suppose maybe that language from our attorney, I don't know, or what what have you, but or,
I'll do a little research, see what other cities have come up with. I'm sure we're not reinventing the wheel here on that part of it. So let's see, you know, I mean, and obviously it all depends. There's some open areas, there's some wooded areas, so it makes it a little tough, but we'll try to come up with something that's feasible and, you know, again, kind of gives our officers the discretion. You know, if this person kind of tucked back in an area where they aren't bothering anybody, but yet the bike trail's just up on top, you know, I mean, so we can figure out some language to work around some of those
okay,
issues.
that sounds good. And then I'm really not for doing any type of a designated encampment. I think that's my personal feeling, but I feel like that's not gonna solve the problem, and it may be very detrimental in our severe winters. So I don't feel that that would be a helpful situation, so I don't know that I would include that, but I think, to me, it just would make sense to give you those tools in your toolbox and to hopefully potentially help a population that needs some obvious help. Thank you.
We're seeing all over the country now, the places that have had these encampments are starting to pull back, and they're changing their laws and ordinances. They're moving them out of these encampments. So I'm dead set against the encampment site, but I do have one other question. What happens if a private company allows people to camp on their property? That cannot be stopped in an ordinance by the city, can it?
Yeah, and it is addressed in the ordinance, again, one that should probably be changed a little bit, because it talks about allowing them, but as long as they have bathroom facilities available to them and things like that. But again, you can see that turning into a long-term issue of, you know, whether it's an RV that's not exactly completely usable and, you know, or setting up, you know, huge tents in a backyard. And so again, another one of those that I would suggest that before it becomes an issue, we try to make sure that we address that.
So that's why we need to work on this a little bit more.
Yeah.
Ryan, any?
The kids can still camp overnight though.
Thank you. The one comment that I would make, and maybe it speaks a little bit to that point, is we've got our local ordinances and regulations, but the state law has some coverage for campgrounds and camping areas. And I mean, there's two different ways about thinking about a designated area. I mean, we could think about a designated area for something in the nature of an encampment. The other thing that you could do, or that the city could consider, is creating some small designated area for those that want to camp legitimately. Say you've got a biking event that's coming through. I know my experience from a lot of other municipalities are that those folks, the people coming through and enjoying the Mesaba Trail, will do organized rides, and they'll look for places to stop. If we had a small, even kind of an informal area that the city could offer for a small fee, an overnight permit to camp, at least then it's regulated and it's being taken care of, and it's not kind of the Wild West out there, so.
And I know Babbitt just is going to be opening a 49-unit camping area for fee up and coming this summer, early spring. So that's all been done. It was $4 million that they just paid to have this done. It was started out at 2.5, and then with all the costs that have gone up and the supply costs, they ended up borrowing more money. Counselor Paulson, or I'm sorry, Counselor Johnson.
And kind of to go on that, we could create designated 48-hour camping spots along the Mesabi Trail or off as a way to facilitate people who are riding from Lake Superior and up.
In Section A of this, if you read it, it says it's unlawful for any person or persons to camp, lay, or sleep on, upon, or near, or about any public lands or structures belonging under the control of the city after such time, except for such special occasions as may be allowed by the city council. So say Jim is going to be scheduling a bike run, bike ride. He says, hey, we'd really like to schedule a stop at this location in your city. They talk to us. We'd then present that to the city council for approval. So something like what we are talking about, is able to be approved by the city council.
Thank you very much.
Okay, anybody else have any discussion? Otherwise, we'll move this on to staff and appropriate individuals to bring back to us. That I believe is the proper step right now. We don't have quite enough information yet, and we'll put together all the pertinent people, and Britt, you can take care of that and figure out some type of committee that can finish working on this, or Brian, your Park and Rec Committee can do that. Okay? Okay, with that, we got a second one in your packet,
Mayor. Can I
which
make a
is,
comment?
Brian,
Mayor?
you got that one too.
Charlie?
Do you need to vote on this first one? There was a motion and a second.
I
Wasn't
didn't-
there? No, there was
we didn't
not?
have-
Okay.
We didn't have a motion, no. What's that? Oh, I'm sorry, Gary, I didn't see her like, go ahead.
Well, just, I want to mention, looking around, I'm the only one wearing a mask. The reason being, I took a phone call earlier from a gentleman I worked with yesterday who told me he tested positive for COVID today. So looking at protocols, it tells me to put a mask on and distance, and other than that, I think the rest of us should be safe, so just FYI. Thank you.
Okay, okay. Kind of guessed that, but. Okay, Brian, go ahead on this second one.
So the second one is regulations as far as parklands go. If we go down to Section D, what the Park and Recreation Commission is suggesting is that our normal park hours for all facilities be 6 a.m. to, I'm sorry, it should be 11 p.m. daily, not 11 a.m. But normal park hours are 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. This does not mean that we are physically closing doors to or closing gates to all of our parks. We would just be posting these hours. We physically cannot close down all of our parklands. There's no way to shut down Silver Lake Trail or Bailey's Lake Trail. We could close gates at Olcott Park. We're not looking at doing that. What this does is it gives our law enforcement officers a reason to go up to an individual who is in the park areas at 12:02 in the morning and say, is everything okay? And they're not harassing them. So that is number one. Number two, dogs are allowed in parks but must be on the leash, following a leash law. Number three, alcohol beverages are prohibited unless allowed by a permit. This is staying exactly how it has been. Number four, cars shall be parked only in designated areas. Number five, ground fires are prohibited unless allowed by permit. This is, again, staying with what we've been doing, is if you want to have a bonfire or something like that, you would have to work with the fire marshal and the park department to get the proper permitting to do an outdoor fire. Number six, refuse must be placed in trash containers. And number seven, driving a motor vehicle on parklands other than on designated parking areas shall be prohibited. This rule does not apply to the police department or park and recreation motor vehicles while in the performance of their duty. So this means that you can't drive your personal vehicle just over the grassy areas. Can't drive your personal vehicle out onto the baseball field and park it in the outfield, is essentially what that is saying.
Okay. Anybody have any questions or discussion? Counselor Paulson?
Thank you. I just have a question on number 7, Brian.
Yes.
So like when events happen there, there's oftentimes golf carts that are being utilized, and sometimes they're the own person's golf cart. It's not necessarily Park and Rec, but if they have other events, they'll bring in a golf cart.
So we would make accommodations for those type things,
Okay,
yes.
so does that need a permit, or does that, I don't know, how often do you have,
Only for very large events.
Events, okay.
Yes, like Land of the Loon or the Bridge City.
but there would be room for those folks to be doing
Yeah,
that? With their
absolutely.
own personal golf cart vehicles? Okay, thank you.
Hey, Counselor Johnson?
Thank you. I have a request for number 2, that we make an ordinance to the poop ordinance with that. Dogs are allowed in park, and also see the ordinance about cleaning up afterwards. That condenses it in the same spot. My other request would be for number 7, instead of police departments, say public safety departments, because logic says you're gonna let a fire truck drive wherever, but you'd also let but if we're gonna do that, let's just put public safety in there instead, because then it's clear. Because not that Chad would go and tell someone in the fire department they couldn't.
Take advantage of that.
But just to be generic enough that, because then that encumbers, allows for, Public Works to drive as part of public safety things. And those are the only 2 things, other than the very short park hours to begin with, but I appreciate you fixing that. Thanks.
Okay, Counselor Beyondich.
And I would like to thank you and the commission for working on this because it's much needed. In the 7 that you have here, would these be posted anywhere at the entrances of the park so people are aware of this?
Yes.
And if this could also be sent to the Land of the Loon Committee when they send out for their vendors to come in? I know they've had issues with the vendors bringing dogs in, but now it's going to be okay. So I really appreciate that.
And if somebody's renting an entire park and they themselves want to put a rule of no dogs allowed, that would still be allowed
Okay,
for that day. But our rule as a city is we're not telling you you can't bring your dog. But for a large group, when you've got 1,000 people, from a risk management standpoint, it may be smart for an organization to say, we don't want everybody bringing their dog. But we just did some scent trials in Olcott Park here the past few weeks, which was a dog event. So we needed to kind of waive the rule of no dogs in the park.
sure.
And that group is gonna come back, it sounds like, maybe not to that venue, but another city venue to do the same thing and
Yep.
maybe in buildings or different things, because they really had a good, you guys provided a very, very good venue for them in the park.
Looking at changing the time of the year that they're coming, so it's not quite so cold. But yet, that was a great regional event that we were happy to host and work with the organization to host it here in Virginia.
Okay, Counselor Beyondich, you got another question?
Just one. In the summer, when there is the band in the gazebo, I know people park on both sides. That won't be an issue, will it?
No, those are designated parking spots.
Okay.
I thought the question you were going to ask is, we allow the bands to drive up to unload and everything. We would be viewing that as essentially park vehicles that are coming in. If we're giving somebody permission, yes, come up. And there are several occasions that we would grant somebody permission to drive on the grass. We're just not wanting everybody to be driving on the grass all the time, because otherwise we're going to have ruts throughout the grounds. We're not going to have grass. And we definitely want to keep motor vehicles off of our baseball fields and athletic facilities.
Sure. Well, once again, thank you for all the hard work on this.
Okay, do we need to do any more work on this particular proposed portion, or are we, pardon? There was 2 items. Okay, then we'll pull this forward to fix this one up with what came out of this meeting. Is that okay, Britt, for you guys? Okay, then we'll bring this back to the
One
council.
more question on this.
Another question? Okay, go ahead, Councilor
I'm so
Paulson.
sorry. It's just right before section 2, second page is item number 2. It says, any police officer shall have the authority to seize and confiscate any property, thing, or device in the park possessed or used in violation of this chapter or any state or federal statute, rule, or regulation. Can you give a definition of device? Is that like, is it like if someone had their phone, or is it like a boombox, or like?
Yeah, and that's another one as we talk about vague ordinances sometimes. And it is. I mean, to me, if something's illegal, it's illegal. And like Brian pointed out, a lot of times it's covered by state statute and whatnot. You know, even if we have somebody that is doing something, we're not typically going to confiscate a boombox necessarily. If it's a juvenile, maybe the boombox is taken and the parents are told to come pick it up from us later if the kid's not willing to listen to what we're telling them to do. Certainly, it also falls, like just to say, we have the teens up there that are hanging out, and I won't get into the one group that's been hanging out there, but let's just say they're vaping and they're underage, things like that. But again, that's all falls under state statute anyways that we
So
would
device would be
confiscate.
anything determined as something illegal.
Illegal activity, yeah,
okay.
or contributing to the
Contributing
illegal
to.
activity.
I shouldn't have said boombox. I mean, you should probably said.
Boombox, I know.
Speaker, you know, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Most of these kids would be like, boombox, what is
Your
that?
generations are like,
Yeah.
boombox, what is a boombox?
What is that? My goodness.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
any more questions of Brian or Assistant Chief Nicola? Hearing none, we'll move this to the staff again. We'll bring back corrected portions of these two proposed ordinances to the next meeting. Do we want to bring them back to just a council meeting, Brett? Or do you want to bring them back? Pardon? What do you guys want to do? Bring them back to the next council meeting? I think we can get them done by then. Is that possible, Brian? That would be, the 9th of November? Okay, all right, then we'll bring them back at a regular council meeting to get these moved, because they have to be read twice and posted. How much? Yeah, and posted. All right, so we move on to item number 8. I was looking at the wrong agenda before, so sorry about that. I was looking at the old one. Discuss requests to purchase for the city to purchase various parcels in Virginia. This portion may be closed if we need to. I looked at it, I don't see anything we need to close for. Do you?
We do need to close for that. We got to talk about this.
We need to talk about this, okay. Looking for a motion.
Move to close.
I just have one question before we get to that
Okay,
item.
go ahead.
And it's not on the agenda, but I have been involved in the Pocket Park where the Marty mural is. And through the summer, the city was gracious enough to add soil to that. The folks at the senior center have come up with perennials we've planted in there. But now they have added tulip bulbs. And my question, they asked me, would they be able, they bought them at a good price, would they be able to be reimbursed to plant the tulip bulbs in that park? And I guess that might be for Sherry.
And it's, Vice Mayor,
Yes, go ahead, Jerry.
thank you. Council, it would be under $100.
Yes.
And we have money.
Okay.
So she would be able to submit the receipt for that. And if I'm understanding, she's already planted them, so we will see some pretty flowers in there in the spring. Thank you so
Do you want a
much.
motion on that, Sherry, for approval? Okay,
I-
please make a motion.
I will make a motion to reimburse for tulip bulbs for the Pocket Park by the Marty mural.
It's been moved and supported, moved by Counselor Bianchi, supported by Counselor Johnson. Any further discussion on that, Counselor? Oh, okay, none.
Donna Peralt?
Yeah, she's president, so. Okay, hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, just have them submit the receipt to Sherry. Okay, now we need a motion to close. Or discussion,
I will make
or recess, I'm sorry.
that motion.
Okay, is there support? Counselor Johnson, moved and supported to recess the portion of the meeting to go to closed session. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, let's take a quick break here because I need to take one.